This isn't some pretty moderation mistake. It's Meta's iron-fisted AI-powered enforcement system doing what it was programmed to do: detect, link, and shut down anything tied to what it thinks is a rule breaker. There's no manual, no mercy, just automated judgment. And I think kind of that's what you're experiencing, right?
When you were providing basically an open platform for people to sit there and post, and it's free, and like it's not subscription based, that I think that the companies that are running those platforms should have to abide by free speech, by the laws of free speech.
Welcome to episode 78 of the Weekly Docket, Silberman Law Firm podcast, where we talk legal news and practical law. Today is July 11th, 2025. I'm Phil Silberman, owner of the firm and your host, and I'm joined by Chris Heald, who's the firm's supervising attorney and my co-host. Chris, give us an update on your poker experience in Vegas. Good, bad, ugly? Did you at least have a good time?
All of the above. Nine days in the state of Nevada is a lot of time. Las Vegas is not built for 9-day trips, but yeah, all the above. Good, bad, ups and downs. Had a good time.
Okay, you're back here with me shooting the podcast. So I'm guessing I'm not going to get a resignation letter from you today. So you did not win big, but we're back to the daily grind. So.
I did not win the $10 million. I did cash in the main event of the World Series, which I feel is an accomplishment. So I can be happy about that. But like any poker player, not happy that I got eliminated when I did.
Anyway, congratulations on at least ending positive. All right, let's go ahead and talk about what's on our docket today. And in our legal news section, we're going to be talking about Texas's internet porn law, which was upheld. This is the one where the porn websites will have to do age verification. And this is bigger than people realize, and we're going to talk about why that is. And then in our legal question section, we're going to talk about wraparound transactions, and why they're popular again. And then finally, in our rant and rave section, my wife was banned from Instagram and Facebook. So we're going to talk about whether I'm married a radical. Should I be worried, or has big tech gone too far? And we may have a special guest appearance for that segment.
Oh my gosh. I love being surprised in these intros. I would not have guessed any of these things. I'm ready to go, Phil.
All right, let's go ahead and kick it off with our legal news section. And this is the Texas's internet pornography law being upheld. So a little background on this. SCOTUS Supreme Court of the United States upheld a Texas law that requires a website where more than a third of their content is sexual material that's harmful to minors to verify the age of viewers via some sort of government document or some sort of other valid document, right? Chris, do you like that law?
I don't like government regulation. You know this, Phil. I'm a live and let live. May not like the content, but I also don't like government telling people what to do.
You would have then sided with the 3 liberal dissenting justices in the Supreme Court. But anyway, this law was upheld 6-3 along kind of conservative versus liberal lines there in the Supreme Court. The real question that we were trying to answer, or the Supreme Court was trying to answer, is does Texas overly burden adults who want to exercise their First Amendment rights to see porn? All right. Now, under that, see, that's a conservative way. Even posing that question would is a conservative sort of bias, but that's really what it is.
Well,
and
I remember reading a case in law school. Free speech is a funny thing, right? I remember a case that had to do with the San Antonio strip club, and the strip club is free speech. And the judge took that opportunity to write an opinion that contained about 200 sexual innuendos. And, this case has been dropped in our lap, and other such things related to the strip club. So
yeah,
it's interesting that all this gets categorized as free speech, but I digress.
Under the strict standard, okay, Texas would have had to proven that there was no less restrictive means to protect children. And that's a hard thing to do. So it's just surprising that this was upheld when you go back to that standard and that precedent. Here's the big deal. For many years now, tech companies have operated under almost complete impunity under Section 230 of the CDA, which is the Communications Decency Act, which basically means there's no real burden around their content. Google, for example, is just the forum and they're not really responsible for what's being posted there, or Meta is just the forum, so they're not responsible for what's being posted on Instagram and Facebook. They've really hid behind this Communications Decency Act. And this Supreme Court case is not necessarily about that, but it's very similar because the argument by the adult content sites, or the porn sites, if you will, is the tech companies they've always argued that the parents should be the one to do more. The burden should always be on the parents. Like parents, you can install tracking software. And then meanwhile, these big tech companies, they benefit from these the least restrictive protections ever. It was always about the parents having the burden. And Chris, you're a parent. You don't have teenagers yet, but it's a big deal to try to set up these apps on the phone don't really work that well. So it's not easy, but
I think, look, you're right that if their argument is to be believed, then as a free market conservative, I would say, look, then they're correct. Okay. Just if it is. Now, I don't have a 13-year-old, so I don't know. Luckily, I hope my kids don't know anything about any of this. They probably know a little bit. I don't want to know about that. But their claim, you're right, is not as simple as its parents. It's also that there are other methods, that these websites are labeled as adult content. And so you can just go to your phone or your laptop and you can say, do not allow adult content. It's that simple. We label it as adult content. So if you disable adult content on your browser, it's over. That you cannot access this website. So it is device-based. So if your kid has a phone and you don't want your kid accessing it on this phone, they can't. If they're right,
you're just going to have to take my word, Chris, in someone having teenagers. It's actually not that easy.
Okay.
But the theory is nice, but they know how to get around it. It's really.
But isn't it also, because I like to take these counterpoints, isn't it also just that simple that your son could go grab your wallet, take your photo ID, take your picture and upload it, and they would be none the wiser? Are we actually doing anything, or is this just the state of Texas saying, we're Christian conservatives, we don't like gambling, we don't like porn, we don't like any of that because we uphold good Christian values?
I'm not sure how the real enforcement is going to play out, or how effective the age verification is going to be. And we can take about it, and we can think about it in a brick and mortar context, and tell me if this is persuasive to you, right? Or if you think this is a good analogy. A fifth grader can't walk down to his local convenience store and buy like a Playboy magazine, right? You remember when we were kids and we go to the convenience store and the little.
I'm pretty sure they can. They could in the 90s. So I don't know what corner stores you were going to, but my friends. That story.
They're not supposed to sell them. Okay. And tobacco, Playboy, alcohol. There's some mechanism where in Texas, TABC can get into a lot of trouble for selling alcohol and tobacco to underage youth. I don't know if it's quite as a big deal if they're selling adult content magazines. No one buys adult content magazines because they just sneak on. You just go online and look at it now. But is that argument not persuasive to you?
What's the argument?
The argument is that the brick and mortar stores have had this huge burden for a long time of enforcing age verification through IDs for tobacco, alcohol, and pornographic magazine sales. And why should tech get to hide behind 230 of the CDA?
I think that's what I was saying. The argument is there's other verification forms other than making people upload IDs and now putting the burden. I think they just don't want that burden. I think they want it so that if you're allowing it, if you as a parent are allowing it on the device, you're taking the reins. Whereas now we have to go verify all these people's IDs. We have this other responsibility. We just don't want that. And they have gotten bitten. One of the things that I did appreciate that I read about was they lost about half to more than half of their content when there was some law that was passed that said, hey, you at least need to verify, one, the age, and two, the consent of the people in the content. And so that caused them to lose half their content because people would just upload stuff. And it's, do you have the consent of both parties? And do we know for a fact that both parties are over 18? That should be definitely a burden on them. And so if you have to take down every single thing that you don't have that verification on, then that's fine by me. But
yeah, that's a good point. Here's the big deal to me that I think a lot of people are missing. This aspect of it is not getting covered. If this can be much more expansive than we think, I don't think this is going to be limited just to porn sites if you read this law. And I think the operative part of the law here is the third of their content is sexual material harmful. And I'm wondering if you scroll down TikTok, and maybe the logarithm is different for everybody else, how much of that is sexually explicit material harmful to minors? So does TikTok start to come under this? And are we going to start seeing this? Are we going to start seeing this be used against Meta and other sites that maybe aren't explicitly porn sites? So
government overreach is scary.
That's
be wary.
And the other question I think I want to leave our listeners with, is this the first step to eroding Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, where these tech companies are not going to be able to hide behind this anymore? Is this going to catapult us toward a new regime of tech regulation?
Well, see, even you're falling into the narrative, though. You're using the language and the rhetoric. Oh, they're hiding behind it. No. As lawyers, we hate when people use words like that, hide behind this, or a technicality. No, it's just the dang law, okay? If we just read it and we just do it, there's no hiding behind it. There's no technicalities. It just is.
It's all euphemisms. And as lawyers, we're paid to put our client's case in the best light. If I were representing the porn sites, I never use the word porn, okay? Because I call them adult content.
Adult content, yeah.
And I talk about a lot of First Amendment, a lot of free speech and burdening adults and privacy and all that. If I'm the conservative guy, I'm calling it a spade, right? I'm calling these are porn sites and these are slick people that want to exploit women and children. That's how we do it as lawyers. Okay. All right, we got to move on. Let's go on to our legal questions section. And in a complete kind of 180 of what we've been talking about, we're not going to move on to some boring real estate stuff. Wraparound transactions and why they're in vogue again. Can you just tell the listeners real quick in your own words, like what if you were explaining this to a friend, a layperson, what is a wraparound loan or transaction?
A wraparound transaction is it's an owner finance transaction to sell real estate. If you think about a typical owner finance, I just sell you my property. I give you a loan, but I'm not actually giving you the money like a bank would give you the money. I'm giving you my property, you're giving me a note, and you're paying me back over time. Wraparound, and in a case like that, usually the property is owned free and clear. I've paid off my mortgage, I own my property. Wraparound means I have not paid off my property yet. I don't want to go sell it, or I can't sell it traditionally, or the buyer can't obtain traditional financing, so they can't go to a bank, get the money, pay me so I can pay off my loan and move on. So I sell them my property the same as I would in a traditional owner finance, but they're taking my property subject to the underlying loan. And so the underlying loan is still going to be there. So we say the new loan is wrapped around the old one. So now they pay me, I go pay my bank. And eventually once they pay me off, I pay my loan off. There's no more liens, no more encumbrances on the property.
Yeah, that's an excellent summation of a wrap. And it is a type of subject to transaction, like you said, that we call it that because the buyer is taking the deed subject to the original existing senior lien that's going to stay in place. And the new wraparound loan is going to wrap around that original lien. Now, these are very popular in real estate markets like the one we're getting into where there's a correction. And here's an example of what's going on right now. And Chris, we're starting to get a lot of calls from investors wanting to do these wrap loans. And I think you'll see why. A lot of people bought at the height of the post-pandemic, okay? And they're facing 20 to 30% corrections in places like Florida and Austin and suburban areas in North Dallas. So that means they're starting to have no equity, or at least, or even getting upside down in their houses. And if they have a job loss or they come under a stressfully financial situation, they're going to be approached by these investors, and the investors say, "Hey, let me give you a little cash. Let me give you 5 grand. You sell me the property." And then the investor's going to buy the property. That loan is going to stay in place. The investor is going to tell them they're going to keep paying on the loan. And then that investor is going to turn around and sell it to somebody else who cannot qualify for conventional financing. And that investor is typically going to owner finance it to the new buyer who can't qualify for conventional financing using a wraparound transaction. So these are now again becoming very popular. And Chris, we got a handful of notes on wraparound transactions that you probably know from our practice. Title insurance is a problem, Chris, on wraps. The buyer's not going to be able to get title insurance. That's just the practicality of things. And the other thing is insurance is a problem. The buyer thinks, okay, maybe there's an insurance policy still in place by the seller of the wrap. If there's a casualty or a loss on the property, the buyer's not the insured. So that buyer needs to go out and try to get their own insurance, which can be difficult because the insurance companies start to see that it's a wrap and they're not completely comfortable with the insurance. So insurance is a problem. Title
We fight about that all the time. We've had many cases where then the underlying person gets the check and they just say, oh, let's just all call it good. I got the money. Now I'm square. My loan is square. And now the person who thought they were buying a house and thought they were going to get a new house built is left holding the bag.
Yeah, it's a big problem. The other thing about wraps that is really important, relatively new Texas law, it was actually Senate Bill 43, went effective January 22, got codified as in the Texas Finance Code, section 159 or thereabout. And this is really regulating these wrap transactions to try to further protect consumers. And it applies to all transactions that are not homestead property. So if you're out there selling your homestead to somebody else as a wrap, this does not apply to you. But this is going to apply to all those investors. And Chris, this is why our pricing went up for doing these wrap transactions, because there's all this extra stuff targeting these investors to protect consumers. And one of the things is if an investor is doing a wrap, they have to use an RMLO, okay, residential mortgage loan originator, I think is what that stands for. And that can cost a lot of money. Sometimes they're as high as 0.5% or 1% of the loan. Sometimes you can find them that are like $1,000 flat fee if you're doing enough volume with them. But you have to use an RMLO. And that means that what that RMLO does is they're going to make sure the buyer can repay the loan. They're going to do all these truth in lending disclosures. So that's a big deal. And then the other thing this relatively new law does is it requires a disclosure to the borrower or the person who's buying the property on a wrap. And that disclosure is basically telling the average person, look, there's an underlying lien on this property, and you may have trouble getting insurance on it. So you've got this disclosure. And if you need to do that disclosure, if you don't, then the buyer's got some rescission rights, which can be a bad thing if you're a seller. Very harsh rescission provision. Big changes in wraps. And that doesn't mean it's impossible to do wraps. If you're an investor out there and you want to do a wrap, don't hear this as prohibitive. They're just some additional steps. Yeah. But lots of calls on wraps. So Chris, be on the lookout for that with calls coming in or people wanting to do wraps. Okay, that brings us to my favorite part of the show. And this is our rant and rave section. And we're talking about my wife getting banned from Instagram. And this is really another free speech kind of topic. But I think we've got a special guest we're going to bring on. Let's go ahead and bring my wife on and tell her a little bit about her experience in recently being banned with Instagram and Facebook. This is my lovely wife. Chris, does she look like a lunatic radical?
Absolutely not.
All right, honey, tell us a little bit about, I know that you've had a hard week or two. You've been banned by Instagram and Facebook. Tell us like what you posted and why you think you were banned.
Well, I think that I posted 3 different things, or not posted, I should say. I reposted 2 things and then I commented on 1 thing. So the thing that I I guess the things that I reposted, one was a Iranian woman talking about the way that women are treated in Iran and the atrocities that they do for women who protest that they don't want to wear the hijab, or like child brides and the age of consent in Iran, and just really about how bad that it is for women in Iran. And then the second thing that I posted was talking about how men in media and movies are often depicted as being, they always, like in the love triangle, they always pit like the hardworking, stable man that has a job that he has to attend regularly, and then they pit him against the guitar playing, like sensitive type, and how the woman always chooses the sensitive guitar playing type. And I just feel like it's very influential on young women to be like, oh, look, you really want to choose the sensitive guitar playing guy, not the hardworking, like sensible guy.
So you posted two things. It really has
Well,
to
there's
do.
a third too.
A
Yeah.
third. Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
And the third thing that I posted was a comment in response to an influencer that I follow, talking about the adults having to age verify for adult websites. And I guess the dissent on that was that, like, it was too much of a burden, or the Supreme Court dissent was that it was too much of a burden for adult to have to upload their information. And I said, and I posted a comment saying, well, in that case, we should stop stopping for school buses because it's too much of a burden for me to slow down.
Yeah.
And total jest. I absolutely believe that you should stop for school buses.
Chris gave us a face on that one. He was visibly offended. Instagram has to protect Chris from his feelings. Let's take them one by one. All right. So the Iranian thing, it's probably no secret that Iran does not treat women well. There's some, I think you were reposting some things about child marriage in Iran. I did do a little research on this for the show. In Iran, the minimum age, here's the law in Iran, the minimum age for marriage is currently 13 years for girls and 15 years old for boys. However, children younger than that can be married with permission, typically the father or paternal grandfather, and the authorization of court. Now, that sounds like young to me. Okay, a problem.
Well, I think the other question is just that, like, when you have someone that's 13 years old, like, Phil, you have a 14-year-old daughter. Do you think that she's able to really consent?
No.
Exactly. And then the second thing is that even if they're real, there's just really no consent. Like, these girls are being told what to do.
Yeah, no, for certain. And I did look up under the United Nations, defined by the UN, child marriage for anybody under the age of 18 is considered a human rights violation.
And let me just back up on like why I posted this, and you can edit this out if you want to. But like the idea was, right, is that after Israel bombed Iran, the people came out and protested Israel in support of Iran. And I think that this is a bipartisan issue. No matter where you land on like the aisle, of you're a liberal or you're a conservative, that if you have any sort of like feminist leaning, like you should be absolutely protesting the regime that is currently in power in Iran.
Okay.
And so I just don't understand how this could even, like, I mean, who on Instagram is moderating this? And I think that you have a kind of a right to know, it was the person moderating that flagged me, were they of a Muslim bent? Like, I mean, that they don't want that information to be put out there?
I don't think it's a real person. I think it's an algorithm or AI that's doing some of these bans. Chris, what do you think? Chris, you be the judge. Is the Iranian thing warrant of a ban, yay or nay?
I don't think anything. I'm not saying nothing's warranting a ban. It's kind of, I don't make the rules, Phil. I just know the rules. And you post things about Trump, you post things about Iran, you post things that have sexual leaning natures. It's going to get flagged. I don't post on social media, but I definitely have. I know the stories. I know about people getting banned. If it's anything even close to inflammatory or, oh, this is bad, you can't say stuff like this, it happens. I don't like banning free speech. I don't like anything like that. I'm not going to say there should be no rules. I'm not going to go that far, but it's a social media outlet. People should post what people want to post. And I thought that was the whole, I guess we're talking about Instagram. I guess Community Notes is on Twitter, where they tried to institute this self-regulating where people could add notes to say, hey, this post may be misleading. I think that's probably a better way of going than just letting a moderator say, I don't like your post and it violates community guidelines. Therefore, I'm going to delete your post. And if you have too many of those, I'm going to delete your account.
Yeah, but like in this case, like one, when they flag your account, they briefly just show you that you violated it in some way. They don't show you they don't even show you the post that it was. So we're just assuming that it's one of these three. They don't show you what it is. And then it just shows you their community guidelines. And it very briefly shows you, and then it says, would you like to appeal it? And it doesn't give you a chance to take it down or be like, oh, my bad, I'm sorry. And so then I just feel like it's egregious in the way that like there's no customer service. So yes, if it's a bot that flagged me, I was banned on July 1st. It's now the 11th. It's been 10 days. And it says on their screen, it usually only takes us a day. There's no customer service. Like what I believe I posted wasn't super egregious, but there's no way for me. And I do feel like it's a little bit of like your community, your friends, like checking in, like being able to see what happened. Like I know with the tragedy that happened in Texas this week, like I feel a little bit cut off from my friends' posts and being able to see what happened. And if you have it, Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, they are basically open forums. They are like the square in the market of our time. And I feel like if you're going to block people from being there, I think that they are accountable to free speech. That they don't get to sit there and be like, oh no, we have our own free speech designation. No, you operate in the United States. You have to abide by United States free speech.
How much First Amendment rights is applicable to private company? And you've got this tension between First Amendment and private company, where Instagram is a private company with the ability to set their own rules. But are we moving towards a new regime or a new law where Instagram is the public forum, or these tech companies are the public forum, and they have to allow a First Amendment freedom of speech? And right now you have that tension starting to play out, and that's a very unsettled law. Chris, what your thought? Chris, it sounds like you would gravitate toward the Instagram being the public forum and protecting First Amendment, or would you say, Chris, that they're a private company and they get to set their own rules?
For now, it's probably the latter. I think maybe you planned this, maybe you didn't. It's an interesting comparison to what we started off with when you said these tech companies are hiding behind the CDA. And now we're talking about, oh, are these tech companies doing too much? Should they just let the market go? So I think you intentionally or unintentionally are putting both sides of the spectrum out there. Okay, this gets back to what Chris always says in every episode, which is, I don't like regulations. And so we have too much regulation on one side. Now we have too much on the other side. We have Twitter and Instagram regulating too much and we don't like it. And then on the other side, it's, the government's stepping in. You're saying that they've got to take responsibility for their content, but are they taking too much responsibility? Are they overstepping? But we don't want porn websites with just free reign. We have to say, no, you have to do something. I think that's an interesting juxtaposition that you've given us, that we get to look at these two things and say, we want something, but do we want, when you ask for regulation or you put it on the tech companies and say, hey, you've got a responsibility, we may not like what we get. So I think that's interesting that you allowed us to see both sides of this today.
Yeah. And this is a quote from medium.com, and this goes to more the practicality of it all. A quote, "This isn't some pretty moderation mistake. It's Meta's iron-fisted AI-powered enforcement system doing what it was programmed to do: detect, link, and shut down anything tied to what it thinks is a rule breaker. There's no manual, no mercy, just automated judgment." And I think kind of that's what you're experiencing, right?
When you were providing basically an open platform for people to sit there and post, and it's free, and like it's not subscription based, that I think that the companies that are running those platforms should have to abide by free speech, by the laws of free speech. Like if that's what you're providing. Like, yes, we don't want to cause anything that's going to like cause anybody harm. I don't think that like you should be able to be like, oh, those people deserved it or something like that. But like, I just feel like you should be able to, I do feel like it's very much absolutely pushing the course of what Facebook or what Twitter or what TikTok, I mean, TikTok especially with it being a Chinese company, that they're basically allowing you to see only what they want you to see. And I feel like that is absolutely mind control. And I think that there needs to be some examination. But like the other part of this is the whole no politician's ever going to look into this because the media companies own them. They contribute so much money to their lobbying that they're never going to go against them. I mean, it'd be political suicide.
Well, this is certainly unsettled law. There's a lot of First Amendment tension here with the private company tension. One thing I said was, can you just get a new device or get a new account or whatever? And it turns out that it is not that easy to just fire up a new account and start posting. They have really good software detection through AI that's going to be able to link whatever new account you try to launch as being related to you. So they're pretty good at shutting it down. But all right, that brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silberman. Chris Hield has been my co-host. Catherine has been our very honored guest. Like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcasts. And as a reminder, nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice, and this has all been for entertainment purposes. If you have a legal question, email us at info@silblawfirm.com, info@silblawfirm.com. Tell us you want it publicly answered in the podcast. Everybody, we will see you next week. That is, unless we get banned for doing this piece.
And I think you should say something about the tragedy that we're praying for all the families.
For certain, yeah. Big tragedy in Texas. We certainly are praying for all the families that have lost loved ones there at Camp Vista in the Guadalupe. And we know a lot of people, and it has really hit close to home. So everybody have a good rest of your week and weekend.